Welcome to the Time for Agape podcast, where we share stories of hope, healing, and transformation through Jesus Christ. And since our founding in 2019, our mission has been clear: to empower the church to love the LGBTQ+ community boldly, to equip the church with biblical truth about God's good design for sexuality, and to encourage the church to stand for the transforming power of Jesus Christ. We've seen God restore countless lives. We pray you encounter Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Time for Agape. My name is Nate, and I am the director of Agape First. We're an inner healing ministry located in Minnesota, and we love to make the name of Jesus famous. I'm excited about today's show because we're starting a new series. We just finished a series of shows called Origins, where we talked about the origins of same-sex attractions and some of the things in life that can set us up for that. So would really encourage you to go back and listen to those. But now we're transitioning to a new topic where we're actually going to be talking to detransitioners. And I'm super excited about our guest today. I'm going to introduce him in a minute. Before I do, I want to bring on my co-hosts for the day, Darren and Gracie. Hey guys.
Happy Friday, Nate.
Hey.
Happy Friday. Well, let's bring on our special guest. His name is William Allen. He is the director of Transformed Life Outreach, and he's a detransitioner. He recently wrote a book called Not Man Enough to Be a Woman. And I have the privilege of being on another podcast with William, and that's kind of how I've gotten to know him. And so now here he is on this podcast. So welcome, William.
Well, thanks, Pastor. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Well, I want to jump right in to some current events and maybe get a little reaction from everybody. There was actually a landmark victory this week in the court in New York State, where a detransitioner sued her psychologist and her surgeon for damages because she was transitioned as a minor and went through a double mastectomy, and she won. $2 million settlement. This is the first of these kinds of cases being won, getting a verdict in our nation. I know there's many, many more, over 50 other cases that we know of that are currently being litigated. But William, I want to throw it to you. What's your reaction to this?
Joy. We don't want to be suing people. I mean, biblically speaking and everything, but something like this, these people have come after kids with just greed in their minds. That's their whole motivation. They need the money to fund the gravy train they're on. This is big business. This transing kids. I mean, it's 2023. It was a $2.1 billion industry, and that's expected to double by 2030. And so they need a supply. They need a supply of fresh patients. These patients for life. And all the chemicals they're going to put in their bodies, big pharma, and the surgeries, and the doctors want that, and they'll go to parents with emotional blackmail. I know you all have heard the question: would you rather have a dead son or an alive daughter? That's just evil. And I've been saying for a couple of years now, I said, look, the people that are perpetrating this on innocent children are they're going to be held to account in this life or the next, and there is some comfort to be found in that. But we don't want to necessarily grieve at someone losing or being burdened like that. But in a case like this, goodness, I'm all for it. I hope it's going to be a trend. I think we're going to be seeing more of it. And we needed that first one. We needed that precedence. I mean, there's been several suits already that haven't won. So I think it's a positive thing.
I do too, and I'm really hoping for a domino effect
Yeah.
to start. And of course, it was cases like this that caused Great Britain to make a shift in how
Mhm.
they handle the transing of children. Darren, any reaction from you?
Yeah, it's definitely a tsunami, and it's a great reversal. You were just saying in the UK they had reversed it, and they closed down their gender clinic. And here in the
Yeah.
States, we've been seeing children's hospitals, one after the other, stop doing it. In Minnesota, just this week, so that they were going to put a pause. Now, it'd be great to say they'd stop doing it, but I want to share this cartoon. Is that these transition lawsuits is really the tsunami that's coming against them. And
Mhm.
we've been praying for the children, for this crime against them to stop, this
Yeah.
harm that people are chasing the ideology, but that's the money. And I was wondering, William, if you could speak to this cartoon where it's talking about things are reversible, and
Yeah.
that's been the biggest argument that I've come up against in my
Mhm.
sphere of friends, is saying, oh well, things are reversible. They can have uh, you know have their chest reconstructed, and they can just stop taking puberty blockers anytime they want, or
Mhm.
cross-sex hormones anytime they want. And I don't think people really understand the damage and what's really happening.
Yeah.
Could you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
That's just one of the many lies, the big lies about this whole ideology. Yeah, we have this term gender affirming care, and that's just woke speak for to mitigate the sound of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and mutilating surgeries, and it's all harmful, permanent damage, and it's not reversible. They're just lying through their teeth. There's no evidence to support their claims. In fact, there's plenty of evidence to dispute it. And we see thousands of young adult detransitioners now uh, who were transitioned as children, and they're mad. That for whatever reason they came to understand the truth. They knew they were living a lie, but so many of them are dealing with physical problems, physiological problems. There's one young woman, and she was one of the lucky few that was still actually able to bear a child. And but when she had her mastectomy as a teenager, apparently they didn't get all of her glands, and she started producing milk, but it had nowhere to go, and it caused such excruciating pain, and she couldn't find any doctors or surgeons that knew how to deal with it. It's just so many problems they're having: osteoporosis, heart problems, just a whole just a wide variety of health issues, and they're going to be scarred physically and mentally for life. And
Yeah.
gosh, we as Christians and with churches, we have to get ready, and because there's
Mm.
going to be so many more, and we need to be ready to welcome these people, open our arms with the gospel, and lovingly, and because they're all looking for purpose. They're a lot of them are in a bad way, and but we need to stop this at the source. I mean, back in my day, I transitioned in the early '90s, and the thought of doing this to a child, that was never even a thought in anybody's mind. Nobody would
Mm.
consider that. Children can't consent to this sort of thing, forfeiting their future sexuality and their fertility, and they have no concept. It's not the kids that are making these decisions. We all know who it is. It's the parents and doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. Gracie, you want to react?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this with other cases. Other situations that we need the right case, and this one, for whatever reason, was the right case, and echoing what everybody else has said, just praying that it opens the doors, and not even just for other people waiting with these cases, but for other things like the gay marriage and those kind of things, to take it on, to be like, hey, look at what this thought process has done down the line and what it's doing to our children. Because that's really what we see, even with the gay marriage and the adoption and all the things that come along with that. It impacts the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard of a child who was raised by a gay couple, and he's quite upset about it, and he's dealing with a lot of mental issues right now. And I think there was a lawsuit pending. I don't know if it's come to fruition yet, but I hope we see more of that as well. Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's transition to your testimony, William. That's the good stuff. That's what we want to hear.
Keyword transition. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how did this all begin for you? Give us a little of the history.
That's a good question. As early as I can remember, like age 4 or 5, I just always wished I had been born a girl. I don't know why. I was a typical boy growing up in the 60s, and we built forts and rode our bikes and blew things up, and we did all that kind of stuff. You would never have guessed this about me, but I always wish I'd been born a girl, and I don't know why. I prayed to God at night when I went to bed that He would change me in the middle of the night into a girl, and I never could tell my parents about it. It was just an innate feeling, that I can't. This has to be a secret. But and even when I prayed that, I had this thought in my mind: what if God does change me? What if I wake up as a girl? How am I going to explain that to my parents? So this gives you an idea of the thought processes of children. Children can't consent to these kind of things. But anyway, there's so much to the story of my youth and my upbringing, and we don't have enough time for all of that, so I'm going to just have to jump way ahead. But this thing dogged me all my life, and it just grew stronger and stronger. And as a teenager after puberty, I was straight. I dated girls in high school. I had a steady girlfriend for 2 years. Dated in college, and then I moved out to the Northwest after college, and I was on my own, of course, and exploring everything, and I saw a notice about a trans support group of some sort. And I was stunned, because even that, as a young adult, I didn't know there was anybody else out there like me. I thought I was the only one in the whole world. So I jumped at that, and I grabbed the phone number for that. I called them, and I went to the meeting, and wow, there's other people like me. I was amazed. It was kind of a relief, actually. And then talking with these people, I saw that transitioning is actually a thing. I just had the desire. I didn't know you could actually do that, right? So I got in with that group, and there came a time when I actually started going as a female, and I got a lot of compliments. A lot of affirmation, that word, I hate that, gender affirming care, affirmation. If I say nothing, I got to say this. If I say nothing else, affirmation is like crack, guys. Got to have it. Can't live without it. Need more of it. And it fuels the desires of somebody in this position. And you can't do it. I was affirmed up one side and down the other, and it was encouraging. It was empowering. And and then all of a sudden I met a girl who on an airplane that I would marry, and we got married. But when we met, started dating, all these urges, these desires that I had, they went away. And I just, wow, this is great. God, thank you. By the way, I had been going to church all my life too. I was raised in the church, and I did these things, and I thought God was somehow okay with this stuff, but whatever. I called myself a Christian. So the marriage was great. She was a godly woman. She wanted to be a homemaker. She wanted to raise children. It was wonderful. A man couldn't have asked for anything better. And then all of a sudden, this old nemesis of mine, it came back in the 3rd year, and it just crushed me. I couldn't function. I couldn't hide it. She knew something was up, and I eventually just had to tell her. And of course, that ended our marriage. That's not what she bargained for. I wasn't the man she thought I was. Neither was I guess. But so yeah, there was that. We ended in divorce, and I came very, very close to suicide. And eventually, I started talking to other counselors, and I made a decision to transition, because I couldn't I realized I can't keep going on the way I'm going, because I was getting so depressed, and it was hard to function at work. I realized I had to do it, or else I was going to be dead soon. And for some reason that didn't seem desirable, even though just previously I had tried to kill myself. So I transitioned, and I was successful. I was one of the ones that blended into society and got on with my life. That's all we wanted to do back then. The last thing we wanted was attention, very unlike what we see today. Yeah, like I said, I blended in, and people just didn't know. I had a comfortable life and a career. I got to live and work in 3 different countries. I had people working for me all around the world, and people didn't know unless I told them. My family knew. I lost about half of my family when I did it, including my father, who I would be estranged from for the rest of his life. And that whole thing is in the book. It's kind of crushing, but there is the story of a literal deathbed reconciliation in the book. I just wish he was alive to see me now, though. So it's difficult. So I just got on with life, and I was happy. And then I came back to Florida. I was living in the Northwest, but I came back to Florida to actually bury my parents. My father was terminal, and my mother died very unexpectedly. So I had to fly across country, and there was other family here that had never met Maggie. That was my name. And there were a section of the family that I had lost, and they never did affirm what I did or approve. But they stepped up. They picked me up at the airport, took me in their home, and because it was a very difficult situation. And I'm an only child, so I didn't have any siblings that could take care of this stuff, And but yeah, my mother had just died, and my father was just barely hanging on. And my aunt, she conspired with the nurse to arrange this reconciliation, and it was, gosh, very, very emotional. But I realized that if my mother hadn't died when she had, I wouldn't have been home in time to see my father. So that's all in the book too. It's very interesting the way that turned out. But after I came back, and my dad died 9 days after my mother, and so we had a double funeral in the spring of 2015. In 2016, I started going to a new church. My aunt and uncle here asked me to go to this new church. Well, it's their church that they've been going to forever, but it was new to me, and so no problem. Sure, I went, and they knew that I passed. That particular church, if a trans person had shown up and they were obvious, they would have been asked to, come, let's talk, and they would have been kind of set straight, offered counseling or whatever, but they wouldn't have been allowed to probably go in the service, because we didn't want to be a distraction to kids, or we didn't want to give the wrong idea to anybody that we were approving of such things. And this is a thing that we actually deal with now, because there have been some trans folks come into the church, and that's what happens. But I passed, and nobody knew. The women there were asking me to join their groups, and in 2016, they announced they were going to do a beach baptism, and I signed up for that. I was baptized as a baby, and I had never. I understood what believer's baptism was, so I signed up for that. And the pastor there, he baptized me as Maggie. He didn't know. He had no clue. I put him in an untenable situation, because at that time I still was not a Christian. I said I was, and I obviously wasn't who I said I was. So, but it was at that church a little bit later, for the first time in my life, I started hearing the true biblical gospel. How does that happen? I was in my late 50s. I mean, I was raised in the church. I went to church all my life, one church or another, depending on where I was in the country. And I was involved. I sang in the choirs. I was an officer in one church. I contributed. I did all these things. But as we all know, none of that makes you a Christian. I look back, I had no idea what it means to be a Christian. I had no idea how you become a Christian. But at this church, I'm hearing the true biblical gospel. I'm hearing things like, no one is good, not even one. Jesus said, no one is good but God. And the wages of sin is death. And it is appointed unto man to die once, and then comes judgment. And these are things that I had never heard a pastor talking about. He was talking about God's wrath and stuff. And this isn't what I wanted to hear. I mean, it was making me mad. But listen, it drove me to the Bible. And something else happened that just blew me away. I tried to read the Bible several times during my life. Never could. It just was gibberish. It was all Greek to me. Hopefully you see what I did there. But I never could understand. I would set out on a Bible in a year program, and by day 3 I'm done. But this pastor, the things that he was saying drove me to the Bible, and the craziest thing, I was understanding the Bible. It was like somebody just flipped a switch, or I cracked a code of some sort, and it's making sense. And he's right. The things he's saying is right. Now, he doesn't always preach fire and brimstone stuff, but I had to hear that bad news, because that opened me up to the good news of the gospel. And I came to understand that I'm not a good person. I kind of thought, other than this whole trans thing, God will let me in. I'm a good person otherwise. I couldn't imagine that he wouldn't let me in. And but I realized that's not how you get into heaven. That's not. And the alternative, as I was understanding it, was scary. And I mean, there's a wave of dread swept over me, because I realized my condition was way worse than I had ever imagined. And I realized that it wasn't just my trans lifestyle or being trans. Yeah, I saw it. I was seeing it as sin, but that's not what condemned me. The thing that condemned me was that first lie that I ever told, right? Or the first time I dishonored my parents. I realized God's standard is perfection, and none of us can measure up. And wow, that just crushed me. And I started doing a lot of research. I was studying the Bible. I started studying apologetics. I found other pastors online, and I mean, strong Bible teachers, and they were all saying the basic same thing, the same core truths. Some of them would differ on secondary issues, but the core was all the same. It was completely different than I had ever thought. God, Jesus, they're not affirming. They say, come as you are. A lot of the trans people I talk to have this belief that Jesus approves of their lifestyle. And Jesus ate with sinners and prostitutes. Yes, he did. And then he told them to go and sin no more. Come as you are, and be transformed. So all these truths, they were just really hitting me hard, and I could all of a sudden see my sin in its true light, and I saw myself for who and what I was. And God, and I hope we still have time just to finish this last little bit. The night came that I broke down crying, just bawling my eyes out. I couldn't take it anymore. I saw how I was really a slave to this sin all my life, and there was nothing I could do to rid myself of it. And I cried out to God, just confessing my sins and asking forgiveness. And that night I repented, and I didn't even know what repentance meant before that. But I knew what it was now. I repented. I turned away from my sin toward God, and I put my faith in Jesus. And prior to that, I had been told by another pastor or another evangelist. He kept saying, "You'll be given a new heart with new desires." That was a hard thing for me to believe, because I didn't want to give up my trans lifestyle even during this whole process. My thinking was, if I make this step, does this mean I'm going to have to detransition? But after that night, I called out to God. I just gave my life over to him with no conditions. My thinking changed from, does this mean I'm going to have to detransition? It went to, I'm detransitioning. I want to detransition. I want this to glorify God. I truly was given a new heart with new desires. And I realized that the Holy Spirit was in me, and I was made new. And it was just, after 30 years, it didn't seem practical to detransition, but all of a sudden I'm seeing a way through it. I can actually get this done. It took 3 years, guys. to do this detransition. A lot of people threw roadblocks in my way. It took me 10 months to find a surgeon who would give me a mastectomy. The moment that they were with me right up to the point I mentioned I'm detransitioning, and then they would hang up on me, or they just didn't want to have anything more to do with me. And that was even here in Florida. But I finally found one. My own medical doctor, my own primary care doc, she tried to put obstacles in my way. She says, I don't want you to have this surgery yet. I want you to go see a psychologist. And I just looked at her. It's the psychologist that got me in this mess. And I said it as sternly as I could, and she kind of got the message. So she had to approve the surgery eventually. But there was other things that she did to try to stop me, and other people tried to talk me out of it. They say, "Yeah, we get it. You're a Christian now. You're saved and all that. You're one of those born again Christians." That was something too. I never even knew that was in the Bible. I read born again. That's actually in the Bible. I just thought that was a slur that we call these radical Christians, born again. And then I had to figure, okay, what does that mean? Yeah, it was, oh man, completely different. I'm just completely transformed, and I'm just loving it. I'm just praising God that He rescued me, that Jesus did what He did on the cross. He lived the perfect life that I couldn't. I'm sorry, I'm just going on.
Amen.
But
Amen.
he laid down His life for me, and I'm so thankful. I'm just thankful for this. Yeah.
There were so many times, William, I didn't want to interrupt because I had goosebumps just listening to your story. And that's the Lord, and it's His work in your life. And I was reminded of a quote. I think this was Corrie ten Boom. She said, there's no pit too deep that God is not deeper still.
Yeah.
And you weren't unreachable, and I think that's an encouragement for so many parents who see their kids transitioning, having the surgeries, and all of that. How far is too far, and yet God found you.
None of it is too far. I've been talking with a lot of parents lately. They started seeking me out, which was weird for me at first, because I represent the very thing that's bringing them grief, But they started reaching out to me, and that's a big part of this ministry. But a lot of their kids, they've already gone through all the surgeries and everything, and they say, "Oh, you can't go." He can. They can come back. Your daughter can come back. Your son can come back. There's consequences, no doubt. I have consequences. My body, I wrecked my body, and there's, without being too crude, there's certain things I can't do as a man. I can't be standing up, but that's a consequence, and I understand that. And I'm stuck with this baby face, and so I still occasionally someone will misgender me. So I know I kind of look like a lesbian sometimes. There's consequences, but there's no point at which you can't come back. Truly. And this body, this is just a shell here on earth now. I'm just longing for the day I'm in the kingdom. We're going to have a glorified body, and none of this will matter anymore. And I'm kind of grateful that I'm older now, and I sometimes I think I'm not long for this world, and I used to think that a lot a few years ago, but I don't know. I have a feeling that the Lord's going to keep me here for a while longer.
Yeah, you've got work to do, my friend.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to
do. I'm ready to go anytime. Call me home, Lord. Come quickly. Either way, but Paul said to die is gain and to live is Christ. So the rest of my life here is devoted to my King, and that's what this ministry is all about.
And I want to make sure that we introduce your ministry again. It's Transformed Life Outreach, and you just officially launched today.
Officially with a Give, Send, Go campaign. My goal is to set a target, because I'm at the point in my life. I'm at a crossroads. I either need to make this a full-time gig, and be able to make a living at it. because I'm out of money. I spent all my available funds over the last year and a half, and I took out a loan against my own retirement to get me this far, just because it was so important to me, and people were reaching out to me, and I just couldn't stop. But I got bills to pay just like everybody else,
Yeah.
and so I either need to go back to work, my previous career, and I can pay off my debt and pay all my bills in a year or so easily. But I much rather do this work, and I feel like this is where God is leading me. So there's a Give, Send, Go campaign out there with a target, and I'm trying to get to that goal. If I can get to that goal in a couple months, within a couple months, I'm diving in full time. And I'll do it for the rest of my life, as long as I can walk and speak and hear and see. That's what I
Hallelujah.
want to do. My heart goes out to all the trans people. They think they're happy. They say the same things that I used to say. They're online. I've had all these open debates online, and they say things that now sound quite silly, but I used to say those same things. And a lot of them come at me with a lot of hate and vitriol and foul language, and I just try to react lovingly, and sometimes we're able to turn conversations around. I'm not saying they've converted or anything, but at least we can have a civil conversation, and that's happened more than a few times. The majority don't turn out that way, but even just one, it's worth it, So yeah, that's what I'm all about now. So please go to it's givesendgo.com/transform life outreach. And I've got a video there, and I'm describing the campaign. I'm describing the ministry and my first primary mission goals. There's 4 of them. They're all described there. And so, yeah, please go and pray and consider funding that if you have available funds. So, yeah, thank you.
Let's get William fully funded, and please check out his book, Not Man Enough to Be a Woman. It's available on Amazon. Released this past August. So, and I'm assuming that's
August
a lot
24.
of your August 24. Okay.
Yeah,
a lot of your stories in there, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, it's all in there. Yeah. And the last chapter 12 is my testimony and the gospel, and the last 3 chapters are all about the trans movement of today. All their lies and contradictions and their logical fallacies and their secret agenda, especially their targeting of children. Guys, this is criminal. In doing the research for that, it was just going to be the last chapter, but in doing the research, I kept learning more and more things that even I wasn't aware of. Even though I was in that life, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff, and I was appalled. I mean, the influence of teachers and doctors and all this drag queen story hour, all these just crazy things coming at your kids, and the number of kids that are experiencing what we used to call gender identity disorder has just gone straight up in the last few years.
Yep.
And there's so many other issues going on here. They're not all genuine. Just one more statistic to throw at you. The American College of Pediatricians reported 3 years ago that 80 to 95% of children that are experiencing gender dysphoria, if left unmedically treated and unsocially transitioned, will resolve their issues by late adolescence. Folks, they grow out of it. Let them. Why are you assaulting their bodies with harm and that they'll never get over? Just let them grow out of it. Now, I was one of the 5 to 15% who didn't grow out of it. So there's going to be a few, yes, but there's other ways to deal with that.
Yes.
This has
Well,
to stop.
I'm glad you mentioned that, William, because we have you on next week as well. So we want to encourage people to tune in, and we want to talk about some of those things. Certainly, the transing of children has been near and dear to our hearts here in the state of Minnesota. We've passed a lot of legislation for that, and to protect
you got a lot of things going on up there in Minnesota.
Yeah, we do.
I feel bad for you.
So, so we just want to. That'll be a little preview to tune in next week, because we're definitely gonna hit that. But William, I really want to thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you for
and sharing your story. What a beautiful story of redemption.
It's real. It's available. It's for free. There's a better way. There's a way out of this, people. Come on. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to live like that.
Yeah. Amen. Want to give a shout out to some of our viewers who've commented. Ashley said, hi, I love your vids. Well, thanks, Ashley. Dirt Bike Kid, nice. All right, so want to thank people for watching today and tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share these videos. That's how we can grow this podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Agape First Ministries Media. We're also on Facebook, and we have a website as well, agapefirstministries.org. If you go to the donate button, we are all US-based missionaries. We're all raising our own support, and that's how we're able to do shows like this. We also put a lot of content on the website as well, so hopefully you can find something that will be beneficial. Well, guys, that's our show today. I hope you were encouraged. I know I was. I'm grinning from ear to ear. Jesus is good, and we love to platform Jesus. We love to make his name famous and bring him glory. And William, you did just that today. So thank you for sharing. We will plan to see you next week for more time for Agape.
I look forward to it.